Hi guys, it's me ChazRHD and welcome today to the race preview for today's 2021 Hungarian Grand Prix from the Hungaroring in Budapest, Hungary. Hopefully you guys are doing well, hopefully doing, no matter what time of day it is in your part of the world, hopefully you're doing as well as you can possibly be doing on this, Sunday, the 1st of August, only about a month of summer to go. And of course, this is the final race before the summer break, so pretty much this is the end of the first half of the season. The first half of the season has been very good, very good, plenty of talking points, plenty of excitement, and I think today we're definitely going to get maybe not as much excitement as we got at Silverstone, but I think we are going to get some very interesting things playing out today, which we'll get into in this video previewing the Grand Prix, which of course the Grand Prix starts in 3 hours from now, yeah, I really can't wait for it, because I think, honestly, if you look at the last 2 or 3 Hungarian Grand Prix, I think they've been pretty good races, to be honest. So, I'm looking forward to it, and I do think we are in for a very intriguing Grand Prix. Not just in the midfield as usual, but I think even in the top 4, given the different strategic choices of those, top 4 there, that you can see on the left-hand side of the screen, I think we are in for a very intriguing Grand Prix, definitely when we get to, say, between lap 10 and 30 of today's Grand Prix. But, you can see there on the left-hand side the grid for today's Grand Prix, but also let me take you through the results from qualifying yesterday, so also you can see the lap times as well. So Lewis Hamilton starts a Hungarian Grand Prix on pole position from Valtteri Bottas in second. It's Mercedes' first front row lockout since Portugal, I believe. Yes, it is. And also, it is their first front row lockout, I was going to say in 3 years, but I remember they had one, in terms of this track, they had one last year, so that stat's completely meaningless. But yeah, it's their first 1-2 in qualifying since the Portuguese Grand Prix, where of course they were very good, and really, with their upgrades that they have brought, they are essentially back to how they were in Portugal and Spain. And after those races, we were saying, yeah, Mercedes are the clear favourites to win the championship here. And given their current speed and the momentum they have, if they win today, you've got to say they are in very good shape at the moment. And then Max Verstappen third, Sergio Perez fourth, Verstappen third. That's his lowest qualifying result since Baku, which does feel a long time ago. And then Sergio Perez in P4, just ahead of the rest of the midfield in terms of lap time. And then you got Pierre Gasly 5th, great result for him. Lando Norris in 6th, Charles Leclerc 7th, and Ocon 8th. I think that's the first time Ocon has outqualified Fernando Alonso since Monaco, I believe. So great there for Esteban Ocon. Then 9th, Fernando Alonso, and 10th, Sebastian Vettel. And then the rest of the top 10, the rest of the order, sorry. Ricciardo, P11, then Stroll, Raikkonen, Giovinazzi, Carlos Sainz, of course, down in 15th because Sainz crashed out on that first run in Q2, and then Tsunoda, Russell, Latifi, Mazepin, and Schumacher. That is your grid for today's 2021 Hungarian Grand Prix. But of course, we will start with the fight for victory today, and given the result of qualifying and the strategic choices that I mentioned a moment ago, with both Mercedes starting the race on the medium tyre and both Red Bulls starting on the soft, I just don't see how Mercedes don't win the race today. The only way I don't see it happening is if, either, a big reliability issue for Lewis Hamilton, or the weather plays, some sort of helping hand for the Red Bull and Max Verstappen. There is actually a decent chance of rain. It did rain, actually, in the F3 race, I believe, like half an hour ago. So there is a chance of rain, and I've been talking to Nib, and I think he said there's a chance of rain at 4 p.m. local time, which would be about an hour into the race. So, it is possible that we could get some rain, and you never know what that could do. But I mean, we've seen in the past, Lewis Hamilton, even in the wet, is even more dominant, there than he is in normal conditions. So, yeah, given the strategy for the race, and given that we're going to have probably a very hot track temperature again, so it'll suit the medium tyres a lot more than the soft, I just don't see how Lewis Hamilton doesn't win the race today. I just don't see how he doesn't, because again, He's starting on the best tyre. He's in the best car for this track this weekend, without doubt. The Mercedes is the best car this weekend. There is no debate when it comes to that. It's just, with the new upgrades, it's just absolutely brilliant and beautiful looking around this Hungaroring circuit. So, yeah, I just think Hamilton is heading for a near certain win. I think the only way, say at the start, say if Hamilton has a mostly normal Grand Prix, the only way at the start that, say, Max Verstappen, and I'll get into this in a moment, the only way he can, say, get ahead is by just, well, you know, not even getting ahead, but just actually putting up a challenge to Lewis Hamilton today for victory. The only way that can happen is if Verstappen, on the softer and more aggressive tyre, gets past both Mercedes on the first lap, which can happen because Max Verstappen, we've seen, he is very aggressive, you know, when it comes to first laps and that. So, you know, it can happen, and I do think there's a possibility if Verstappen initially gets a great launch off the line. Of course, he does start the clean side of the grid, so compared to, let's say, to Valtteri Bottas, he should have a very good chance of getting ahead of him at the start. But for, you know, again, in terms of him fighting against Lewis Hamilton, he has to get past Hamilton on the first lap. If he doesn't, and the race is dry, it's just not going to happen for him. So, Lewis Hamilton, great job yesterday in qualifying. He is definitely back to his brilliant best. The car definitely is better, but I think Hamilton also is driving very, very well. His lap yesterday was just fantastic. And yeah, I think Lewis Hamilton is heading for a near certain victory. And we'll get on to Red Bull now, because I've got a bit more to say about them. With Red Bull, I think I said this yesterday, that with them going for the soft tyre for Verstappen and Perez, I think the reason they put Perez on the soft tyre is so that maybe at the start he could get ahead of one of the Mercedes and then try and help Verstappen that way. You know, holding up one of the Mercs to try and help Verstappen against the two Mercedes. But, you know, Perez still P4, and Perez, honestly, I don't think is really going to feature in the fight for even the podium that strongly. So, yeah, I don't think Perez is really heading for much today. But with Max Verstappen, the reason they went for the soft tyre for him is because they knew Mercedes had a quicker car, but they still thought Verstappen was going to be on the front row. Now, if Verstappen did qualify second, then his choice of the soft tyre wouldn't have been that bad. Because if he was on, say, or in second place, then he probably would have a very, very good chance of getting into the lead and would be the favourite to be in the lead at the end of the first lap because of being on the soft tyre. So that's what Red Bull were trying to do, but they didn't anticipate that Mercedes would lock out the front row. So it makes that strategy now, unless Verstappen can pass Bottas and Hamilton on the first lap, it makes that strategy quite bad in terms of the race today. Because what's going to happen, let's say, and by the way, with Hasse Basso in the chat, I will get into that in a moment when it comes to Verstappen's engine, because there is some news about that with his power unit from Silverstone to here. What's going to happen is, let's say Max Verstappen gets ahead of Bottas or doesn't, and, you know, is second or third. What's going to happen compared to, say, Lewis Hamilton is in, say, the first 10 laps, Max will probably have decent speed. Not great, but decent speed. The gap won't be too big. It'll be, you know, 2 or 3 seconds, say. And then what will happen between lap 10 and 20 is the medium tyre will just continue consistently providing Hamilton and Bottas with the grip needed to maintain a good, solid lap time. But for Red Bull, as we saw last year with Charles Leclerc when he used the soft tyre last year, what will happen is after about 10 laps, Verstappen will probably hit the cliff. Now, Verstappen is very good at looking after tyres, but I don't think he's that good. So that's what I mean by, if he doesn't get ahead of Verstappen, of Bottas, and Hamilton on the first lap, what will happen after about 10 laps is any advantage he did have would have completely gone, and then for the next 10 laps until lap 20, he will just continuously lose quite a lot of time to Hamilton and even Bottas, if Bottas is even behind him, and then he won't really be in the fight for victory because, I mean, yeah, maybe they could try and undercut, but by the time they get to the first pit stops, I don't think Red Bull on that tyre will be close enough to Hamilton to really try and undercut, because once they get to the pit stop phase, I think Hamilton will probably be pulling away so quickly that Verstappen will be thinking more, I've got to beat Bottas or stay ahead of him if he is ahead of him at the start, rather than getting after Lewis Hamilton. And to be honest, I think Mercedes could probably do a one-stop race today because, I mean, they have the best grip this weekend of anyone out there, so that they'll be able to look after their tyres well. And they are pretty good at looking after tyres around a circuit like this. So I think Mercedes can definitely do it. But I think with Red Bull, really, no matter what happens at the start and whether Verstappen goes from, say, third to first or to second or stays third, Red Bull really have committed themselves to a two-stop strategy, because if they go from, say, the soft tyre to the hard tyre between lap 10 and 20, that hard tyre is not really going to get to the end of the race, 50 plus laps. It's just not really going to do that, because by the time it gets to the end of the race, they're going to be so dead and they're going to be so slow that, the drivers are going to be really struggling for grip. So really, Red Bull are committing to a two-stop race today. And I think what you'll see is Verstappen probably pitting around lap 20 at the absolute most, but probably lap 15, to be honest. I think that's probably when Verstappen and Red Bull will try and pit, because it's long enough into the Grand Prix to build a big enough gap to the midfield so he has, a big enough gap to drop into and have clean air if he pitted on lap 15. But there's no way, I don't think he could probably go to, say, lap 2021 without losing loads of pace to Lewis Hamilton and even Valtteri Bottas, who will be on the better time, because Hamilton and Bottas, they'll be able to go until, say, lap 25 at least. Maybe even lap 30 if they're in a comfortable position and they don't really have to push. If they're in that position, then they can probably go to, say, lap 30, put on the hard compound tyre, and then go to the end just like that. With Red Bull, like I said, lap 15, I think, is when they'll be pitting, and then they'll probably have to go for a two-stop, whether that be, going onto a set of mediums and then a set of hards, or going onto a set of hards and then another set of mediums. We'll have to see. But if they go soft, medium, then probably they'll be pitting again from the soft to the medium around lap, say, 37, 38 to go for another set of medium tyres. If they go for the hard tyre after the, on the first pit stop, like I said, I don't think they'll get to the end, because I think the hard tyre would probably only be good until, say, if they were to pit around lap 15 like I expect, the hard tyre would only be good until, say, lap 50, really. And then after that, those last 20 laps would be very, very tough. And I don't think Red Bull would want to take the risk of a puncture, to be honest, around the fast corners that we have at the Hungaroring. So, Red Bull, if they win this race today, it's going to have to take something major, really major, whether it being Hamilton having a big issue or Verstappen producing probably the best drive of his entire career. And honestly, if you look at this race, I think if Verstappen's going to win, he needs to, and Red Bull will need to give him a strategy similar to what Michael Schumacher had in 1998 at this circuit, where, if you remember that race, you had a McLaren 1-2, and then I think it was a Ferrari 3-4, and Ferrari, what they did is they put Michael on a very aggressive, I think, 3-stopper, and the McLarens, I think, were on a 2-stopper or 1-stopper, and even though, running more fuel into the race should have given McLaren more speed, Michael was so damn quick that he still ended up jumping the McLarens and winning the race. Verstappen's going to have to do something like that, where even though he has to stop one more time, his pace is so immense that he's able to still fight his way back through and pass, for the victory, whether it be in the pit stop phase or on circuit. So it's going to have to be that type of drive. But honestly, coming into this race, I think it's definitely Mercedes, the clear favourites, and I would be Unless Verstappen gets into the lead at the end of the first lap, I would be very surprised if he won the race. Very, very surprised. Anyway, now let's move in to the midfield teams. Ferrari, I thought, were very disappointing in qualifying. 7th for Charles Leclerc, when really it should have been P5, because Ferrari had the pace really to be on that third row of the grid. Yeah, I think Charles Leclerc really should be disappointed with that, because I don't think McLaren or AlphaTauri, the two cars ahead of him, I don't think they have a car as good as the Ferrari. So I think Charles Leclerc really should be disappointed with his performance there. And Ferrari, honestly, I think will be very disappointed with the result they have, or had, with qualifying, because Leclerc, like I said, really should have been P5, and then Carlos Sainz probably would have been, say, at worst, 6th or 7th, but of course he's down in 15th because of a error in qualifying that was, I mean, it was his error, but also the car just losing grip kind of weirdly at a certain point. So, yeah, not good there, but 7th and 15th is definitely not a grid position that Ferrari will be happy with. And I think for the race today, it'll be interesting to see with Charles Leclerc, firstly, how they got on with the tyres. Because, I mean, he's starting on the soft compound tyre. At times this season, Ferrari have struggled when it comes to looking after their tyres, but there's been other races where they've done really well. So it's hard to say whether he will drop back or move forward. I don't really know. But starting on that soft tyre compared to, say, Ricciardo, Stroll, Raikkonen, who will be starting outside the top 10, and they'll probably start the race on mediums, though, those drivers, he'll be a big disadvantage to them. He really will, especially Daniel Ricciardo, who I think can go a lot quicker than P11, to be honest. For Carlos Sainz, though, in a way, if he can make up a couple positions on lap 1, his strategy should be good enough to see him getting up into 7th or 8th in this Grand Prix, because really, if he just goes, lap 30, 35 into the Grand Prix until he pits for his first and probably only pit stop, then he will have a lot fresher tyres for the end of the Grand Prix, but also he'll probably jump a couple cars in that process. So I think Carlos Sainz will still be very strong today, and I still think he will score some decent points, but just not as many as he probably, should have been scoring this weekend. But it's hard to say with Ferrari what the result is going to be. I don't think he'll be as good as it really should be, but I do think they'll get both cars in the points somehow, some way. But McLaren, I think they're heading for a very good result here, because as long as Lando Norris keeps it, smooth sailing and just doesn't really get too heated, say, with another driver out there, I think Lando Norris will be fine today. I think the McLaren will definitely have the better race pace to beat Ferrari today. I think McLaren, I mean, if, for example, Charles Leclerc, if he's within a second of Norris, he's not really going to pass Norris, because it's pretty hard to pass at the Hungaroring anyway. But also, the McLaren in a straight line is probably the quickest car in a straight line in Formula 1 at the moment. So I don't really see Norris being overtaken by Charles Leclerc unless Leclerc has a massive pace advantage because of fresher tyres or softer tyres or something like that. So I think Norris will be fine. I think really if he could finish in P5, that would be an amazing result, because this track, when they came to this weekend, they would have been thinking that Ferrari would probably outscore them again this weekend. But when it comes to, what we saw in qualifying, McLaren are definitely in a better position for a good or a better race result than Ferrari are, because again, Norris is ahead of Leclerc. As long as he maintains position, he should be fine. And then for Ricciardo, he is the first man in the field to start on whatever tyre he wants to, and of course a fresh set of tyres. And like I said, because the McLaren has such good race pace, I think Ricciardo will be in a very good position today to at least jump the two Alpines and Vettel. Anyone ahead of him, though, say Leclerc, Norris, Gasly, I'm not sure. We'll have to see. We'll have to see how much time he loses in the first stint to them before they pit, in terms of time on track, getting held up in the traffic. But yeah, I think McLaren, I definitely think a double points finish, and I do think they will score more points than Ferrari today. And if they did, it would be a big result, because like I said, coming to this Grand Prix, McLaren would have expected to not really get near Ferrari properly, especially in qualifying, and they've actually ended up pretty much with a better result, 6th and 11th compared to 7th and 15th. So McLaren looking good, and I think they're going to end the first half of the season very strongly. Now, before we get into the rest of the teams, just going to quickly get into the sector time data. But before I do that, I just want to let you guys know that I will be live in 2 hours and 10 minutes from now for the race watch along for the 2021 Hungarian Grand Prix. And also I'll be live tonight at 7 PM UK time to review the 2021 Hungarian Grand Prix. So don't forget to come along to that, and don't forget as well to subscribe to the channel, hit the notifications bell so you are notified as to when I go live later on. And as well, don't forget to smash the like button and share this video and channel everywhere you can. Now, I just remembered someone in the chat mentioning Max Verstappen's engine. I'll just go back to Red Bull. So Max Verstappen had an issue with his power unit yesterday. They found a cracked Red Bull in his power unit, so they've had to put a new one in. He has not incurred a penalty because it is damaged, and you're allowed to do that if it's clearly, damaged, and you're allowed to replace the part, whatever that part or parts may be. So, yeah, Red Bull, a fresh power unit. Sometimes you do see when a fresh power unit's put in that you can have teething problems. So we'll have to see if that does occur in this race. Hopefully not for Max Verstappen, because that would be an absolute gutting blow if he was to retire from the race and Hamilton was to take the lead of the championship commandingly today. But, yeah, Verstappen hopefully should be fine. The reason there was a crack is because I think of that accident at Silverstone, and I'm guessing they didn't really see any data that suggested a problem until, say, qualifying yesterday. But yeah, Verstappen hopefully should be fine. Anyway, let's get to the sector time data. And the reason we look at this, of course, is to see really how the qualifying results ended up the way they did, and also it gives us a better opinion of what's going to happen today. So in Sector 1, if we look at first, Mercedes versus Red Bull. Sector 1 I was very surprised by yesterday, because the first sector you'd think would suit Red Bull, because you got 2 DRS straights, even though one of them, yes, is very short. And also you have a flat out section at the exit of turn 2. Through turn 3 is flat out, and then the run up to turn 4. So it's mostly full throttle, the first sector. But Max Verstappen was losing not exactly a tenth of a second, but pretty much a tenth of a second to Mercedes in the first sector. So I don't know why that is. I don't know if maybe they just didn't have the front end grip in those, 2 slow corners, turn 1 and turn 2, Verstappen and Red Bull. I don't know what happened there, but it is surprising Mercedes was so quick in sector 1, where I thought that's where Red Bull would really show, to be very strong. And then in sector 2, not a massive surprise that Hamilton is a tenth of a second quicker, because Mercedes are better in more, say, aero-reliant corners, say more so than the higher speed, flat-out stuff compared to Red Bull. And then the final sector, a bit surprising that Verstappen and Red Bull were a bit closer in the slower corners. They were only losing, 2 or 3 hundredths of a second. Was Verstappen to Hamilton. But really, Sector 1 and Sector 2 is where Verstappen is losing the time. He's losing, in the first 2 sectors, he's losing about 0.2 of a second. And then Sector 3, it's basically equal. So, and that's what I also mean with, the strategy today. If he doesn't get ahead Verstappen of Hamilton at the start, Hamilton will probably pull in the first few laps, a 2 or 0.3 of a second gap per lap to Max Verstappen. So I just don't see what Verstappen could do. In Sector 1, Mercedes is just too quick for Red Bull to really get a serious run on the Mercedes by the looks of it. But yeah, Mercedes just, in all sectors really, do have the best car. Now, when it comes to the midfield, it's a bit surprising. So McLaren are about where you expect, say, in Sector 1, and I'd say Sector 2 as well, because Sector 2 does have its fast corners. So it's not a massive surprise they are in those sectors that they are looking good. But in Sector 3, McLaren are quite low down. Lando Norris, the highest placed McLaren in Sector 3, is down in 10th or 11th place. So, I mean, he's losing 4/10 of a second alone in the final sectors. The McLaren in the slow corners is really losing a lot of time. So if that's going to be, a weakness today, then that's probably where it's going to come from McLaren. But the Sector 1 and Sector 2, they're very quick. Also, with with Ferrari, very weird with them. So Sector 1, they're quite quick, say, compared to the midfield, which is a bit of a surprise because, again, Sector 1 is the most highest speed part of the circuit. You'd expect Ferrari would be at their worst in that sector, but they're not. They're P7 and P8, which is pretty good. And then in Sector 2, which is also high speed, they're even better there. 5th and 7th in that sector. But in Sector 3, in the slow corners, where you would expect Ferrari to be good, because, I mean, in Monaco and Baku, they were so strong in the slow corners. That's what allowed them to be up on pole position. Look at Sector 3. Charles Leclerc is down in, 9th place. And then Carlos Sainz is, just a few positions down. So it's very surprising how Ferrari in the slow corners have really lost a lot of time there. I don't really understand why, because you'd think if they were so good in Sector 1 and Sector 2, then in Sector 3, they would be up there. They were Gasly and Alonso in terms of sector time and would probably be, say, 1/10 of a second quicker. And if Leclerc, for example, was 1/10 of a second quicker in the final sector, Leclerc would have qualified in 5th place, maybe even 4th on the grid. So I don't know why Ferrari are losing so much time in the final sector. I think it might have something to do with Ferrari. They haven't developed their car really since Monaco, and other teams have. So maybe that's why they're not really that good in the slower corners this weekend, and they're better in the high speed stuff. Maybe they took some wing off, I don't know. But in the slow speed corners, that final sector, they're just not that quick, and that is a bit alarming if you are Ferrari. And I think it does show why Ferrari ended up with, say, with Charles Leclerc, a disappointing qualifying result. Because in Sector 1 and Sector 2, Charles Leclerc looks absolutely fine. So, I think Sector 3, there's just something not right there for Ferrari. Again, maybe it's set up. Maybe it's just because they haven't upgraded the car in so long. Other teams have caught them up in that area. Also, when it comes to Sergio Perez, in Sector 1 and Sector 2, Sector 1 and Sector 3, sorry, he's not really losing that much time. I mean, in qualifying, he was... Let me just get out the qualifying results to see how far off he was. He was, 6/10 of a second slower than Verstappen in qualifying. In Sector 1 and Sector 3, he's only, 2/10 of a second in those two sectors combined slower. It's Sector 2 where he's losing all the time. He just has no confidence and real grip, it seems, in the high-speed corners in Sector 2. Because, I mean, compared to Verstappen, look, he's losing almost half a second, pretty much half a second, to Verstappen in Sector 2 alone. So that's where Perez is struggling in those high-speed corners. So I'm going to guess he's not confident with the rear end of the car. Maybe some setup issues. I know Verstappen has some setup issues from practice, I think, earlier in the weekend. So maybe Perez has suffered a similar problem. But quite surprising considering how slow Perez was in Sector 2 that he still finished in P4. Again, given how slow he was in Sector 2, where in Sector 2 he was, I think, barely in the top 10 there. So, yeah, Perez struggling there. But, yeah, I think we can see from here, Mercedes definitely the quickest car. Red Bull, I mean, they're the second quickest car, but they're not really quite there with Mercedes. And then it looks as though it's really McLaren and AlphaTauri, the two strongest after that. And then Ferrari in Sector 1 and Sector 2 looking good, but Sector 3 really dropping off. And then interestingly, another team, Aston Martin. I mean, Sector 1, they're 9th and 10th, which is not a surprise because, again, high speed and that's their strength. But in Sector 3, the slow corners where you'd expect them to be slow, they're pretty much quicker than Ferrari there. So, again, it's a bit of a surprise there. They're so quick. So maybe Aston Martin have made some improvements there. And They have brought some upgrades, I think, since the last time we were at circuit, really, that was reliant on aero as heavy as this circuit. So, yeah, that's probably why they've improved there. But not too many surprises there, given what we saw in qualifying. Now we'll race through the rest of the teams before the end of the stream. First off, Aston Martin. And for Aston Martin, I thought their result was pretty good. P10 for Sebastian Vettel. Really the best he could have done. The Aston Martin, I mean, you saw the sector time data. They were decent, but they weren't anything special. And what they did really was even exceeding, I think, slightly expectations. And I think if you asked Aston Martin, you know, would you take 10th and 12th on the grid, they would have snatched your hand off for that. So, yeah, Aston Martin, good result for them. I do think Vettel will struggle to get into the points today, though, because he's starting on the soft tyre, and he's going to be the first in line to be disposed of the people behind who will be on fresher and probably better choice of tyres, say Ricciardo and his teammate Stroll. But for Lance Stroll, given that Stroll is always a great starter, and again, he can start on whatever tyre he wants to, and as you can see in this picture, he's on the medium tyre, he will probably start on that tyre, and if he does, I think Lance Stroll will definitely finish in the points. I don't think it will be a load of points, probably 9th or 10th, but I think Lance Stroll will get into the points today. And as long as Aston Martin can get points, given that Gasly's up in 5th, that's all they can really do. I mean, they're not going to beat Gasly today if Gasly has a normal race, because Gasly is looking very quick, and I think AlphaTauri do overall have a quicker car just about this weekend compared to Aston Martin. So really all they can do is just nick a couple points, maybe get 8th and get 4 points, which would be, you know, decent, and really, you know, prevent Alpine, who are just behind them in the constructors, of course, I think 8 points behind, try and prevent them from catching up a bit, because of course if Alpine were to finish in 8th and 9th, then Alpine would gain 6 points, and if Aston Martin finished where they started, they'd only gain 1 point. So need to try and make sure they don't allow Alpine to gain a load of points on them, because that would be bad news going into the summer break. For AlphaTauri, Pierre Gasly, of course, starting in 5th. I think Gasly will probably finish at worst P7. I do think he will have a bit of a struggle to keep Norris at bay, to be honest, because I think Lando Norris is just, you know, at the moment he is one of the best drivers on the grid, and also the McLaren car is probably the best midfield car on a race day. So I think I'll have a struggle to keep him behind. And with Charles Leclerc, I think that will come down to probably pit strategy, to be honest, because I don't see Charles Leclerc passing Gasly on track, because I don't think the Ferrari has quite enough straight line speed to pass Gasly down the main straight. So I don't think that's going to happen. But I think Gasly definitely will score at least 6 points in this Grand Prix today. Yuki Tsunoda, of course, I think he started about 16th in Silverstone. And of course, he did finish P10. And I think the strategy he was on was very good. And I think they're probably going to try a similar strategy today. Run him as long into the Grand Prix as they can, probably on the medium or the hard, and then have fresher tyres for the end and try and make his way through. Tsunoda can definitely get into the points. There is no doubt about it. He is in a quick car. I think the reason Tsunoda qualified 16th is because really he didn't really have the confidence in his car so far this weekend, because of, you know, what we saw on Friday when he had that accident. But AlphaTauri should be definitely scoring, you know, decent points with at least Pierre Gasly. For Alpine, 8th and 9th, got to say firstly, great to see Esteban Ocon back in the action in P8, out qualifying Fernando Alonso, like I said, for the first time since Monaco. A great job there for Esteban Ocon. But for Alpine, this is a big race, because they're P7 in the constructors. They're only, I think, 9 points behind AlphaTauri. They probably won't score as many points as Gasly today, so I don't think realistically they're going to gain points on AlphaTauri unless Gasly has an issue today in the race that causes him to drop a load of positions, and that would be great news, of course, for Alpine. But if that doesn't happen, then really Alpine have got to make sure they score more points than Aston Martin, which at the moment, like I said, they're heading for 5 more points than Aston Martin. If they could do that, that'd be a very good result. The only thing is, with Alpine, is at the end of a tyre stint, they do tend to be very slow, and I'm just a bit worried today, given that they are starting on the soft tyre and you've got, you know, Ricciardo, Stroll, Raikkonen, Giovinazzi, Sainz, who will be on the say medium or hard, I'm just concerned they'll fall back quite a bit and end up getting jumped by those cars. So I mean, we'll see what happens, but I'm a bit concerned that their pace will drop off quite dramatically once we get to, say, lap 15, lap 20 in this Grand Prix. But they need to definitely outscore Aston Martin today. That's got to be the aim, because they've got to try and make sure they keep gaining on the teams ahead of them in the Constructors, which, of course, they did do at Silverstone, where they scored, there was 8 points at Silverstone compared to 4 that Aston Martin scored. So they keep that up, then it should be a good Grand Prix, and hopefully they can then go into the summer break with a positive mindset. Alfa Romeo, 13th and 14th. That's pretty much the best qualifying they've had since Bahrain, the first race of the season, where I think they were 12th and 14th. You would think Alfa Romeo, given how quick they are on a race day, that they would be able to get in the points, but I just don't think they can, because I don't think they'll have enough pace compared to Ricciardo, Stroll and Sainz to beat them in this race. I think, though, they could probably get after, say, one of the Alpines and Sebastian Vettel, given again that they are stuck on the soft and they're going to be a bit, say, at risk. But yeah, I just don't think Alfa Romeo have enough pace, I'm afraid, and that's really the story of their season. They're just simply not quick enough and close enough to that top 10 to be getting points on a regular basis like they probably should be at times. And finally, for Williams, I mean, they're just really, really crap this weekend. 17th and 18th, their first Q1 elimination for both Williamses, you know, the entire season so far. Just shows you how good Russell has been in the Williams. And yeah, I think I think Williams are going to have a struggle, because this track just doesn't suit their car at all. I mean, you can see, if I go back to the sector time data, pretty sure it shows that Williams, in all sectors really, are just nowhere near anyone ahead of them. They're consistently around 16th, 17th, 18th in all of the sectors. So yeah, I just don't see what Williams can really do today. So yeah, Williams is going to be at the back, and so will Haas F1. But guys, that is it for the race preview. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. And yeah, hopefully you will join me for the race watch along coming up later today in about 2 hours from now at 1:30 p.m. UK time. And join me and Nib for the final race before the summer break at the Hungaroring. And also make sure to join me for the race review later tonight as well at 7 p.m. UK time. It'd be great to have you along for that as well. But yeah, thank you guys for coming along. Again, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notifications bell for that content coming up later today. And also, don't forget to smash the like button, share this video and channel everywhere you can, because it really does help out the channel and the growth of this channel, as we're almost at, 11k now. And as well, don't forget to join my Discord server, link below in the description. That's the best place for notifications of my videos and streams. And also, we have almost 500 people in there, and it's a pretty active server. So if you do want to be a part of a group and, you know, feel like you're part of something, then it'd be great if you could join us in that Discord server there. But guys, until my race watch along starting in 2 hours from now, it has been me, Chazza HD. Goodbye.